are focusing very much on shaping China's decisions so far and on China's actions, China's motives, whether we can know them or not. I want to take to the side arguing for the motion United States action, motives, and intentions, and ask you whether there is a responsibility on the United States side, in your view, for aggravating this situation. And if so, is there something that does the United States need to retreat from its ambitions in order to stem off the sort of situation you're talking about, or is that inevitably impossible? Peter Brookes.
I would say that countries try to protect and advance their interests. The United States is a Pacific nation. We have more trade with the Pacific than we do with Europe today. We have allies out there. We have 5 sets of allies in the Pacific theater. We have defense and security commitments. As I mentioned, $1.2 trillion of trade goes through the South China Sea. So I think the United States is trying to protect its interests, meet its obligations. Of course, putting into play human agency, the United States could move away from those commitments. It could move away from securing its interests. It could move away from trying to advance the interests of the American people in the Pacific. It could cede authority it could cede the prominent position to the Chinese. That is certainly a choice. But I don't believe that nations operate in that manner. I believe that just like the Chinese, they're trying to advance and protect their interests, and the United States is doing the same thing. And the problem is that the United States and China are not in alignment on their interests. This happens. And that's where that competition and rivalry comes from.
Robert Daly.
I would like to ask then what the United States should do. I just met Professor Mearsheimer backstage, seemed like a very nice guy, but you have advocated that the United States, in defense of its interests and to protect its current status, actively seek to harm the economy of China, a place that has brought hundreds of millions of people out of absolute poverty. You advocate for dropping some of them back into poverty. This would hurt their medical system, their educational system. Is this what we want to do and be? Are these the sorts of methods that we have to use, that we are predetermined to use?
If I was in a position to slow down Chinese economic growth, I would definitely do it. China is going to be a potential peer competitor, and we're going to have an intense security competition. And you go to countries like Japan, you go to countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, they see this one coming. And people there, if they could hit a switch that would slow down the Chinese economy, they'd do it as well, because they know what's going to happen when China becomes really powerful. And remember, we're talking about a China that's much more powerful in 20 or 30 years than it is now, has a lot more weight to throw around. The Chinese have made it very clear that they're going to throw that weight around. They think they own the South China Sea. They want Taiwan back. They want the Senkaku or Diaoyu Islands back. This is not a status quo power.
And of course, let
me let your opponents respond. Kevin,
on the minds of every chancery in the world today is this: what will happen if Chinese economic growth stalls? That's the question today, because it actually sucks out what little growth there is in the global economy today. It sucks out the job opportunities which are emerging in Africa and Latin America and other parts of the world. And as a consequence, the damage to American jobs as a consequence of global growth going down and global demand for US goods and services goes down as well. That is the most self-defeating argument I've seen. The point about what alternative options exist other than seeking to economically strangle a country is as follows. In the period leading up to the First World War, if you read, I think, the seminal text called Sleepwalking to War, published in 2013-14, it points to a chronic failure of diplomacy between Berlin, Paris, and Vienna and London in the critical months of July of 1914, where diplomacy could have averted conflict. That is the conclusion of the most seminal and recent study of the events leading up to the First World War. The idea that Britain could have even conceived of strangling the German economy in 1900 was simply not on the table and would have been injurious to general growth in Europe then, in a way in which such an action towards China today by the United States or anyone else would be injurious to the entire world's workforce.